South Korea is facing this wild situation where an entire generation of young people is just opting out, like completely checking out of the whole marriage and family thing. Honestly, it's a bit of a wake-up call, not just for Korea, but for the entire world. I mean, what kind of society pushes its youth so hard that they'd rather not have kids, not buy homes, and even question the whole point of living? Gee, if that's not a failure, what is? So here's the thing, South Korea's birth rate is tanking, like really badly. Their latest stats from 2023 show that among newlywed couples married less than 5 years, nearly 29% have decided to go child-free. That's a pretty big chunk, right? If this trend continues, well, Korea's population could just shrink out of existence. It's like watching a slow-motion train wreck. Let's start with the obvious, money. Yeah, it's a major factor. Over the past decade or so, the Korean government has thrown all sorts of policies and literal cash at the problem, hoping to encourage families to have more kids. But, well, it hasn't really worked. You know why? Because the costs tied to raising a family in Korea are insane. Take housing, for example. In Seoul, where most of the jobs are, housing prices are through the roof. Over half the population lives in the capital region, so demand is crazy high, and supply just can't keep up. To afford an apartment in Seoul, the average person would have to save every penny, no eating, no spending, for like 15 years. That's the reality. And then there's education. Oh man, the cost of raising a kid in Korea is off the charts. Private tutoring is practically a national obsession. Korean kids start going to these expensive after-school programs as young as 4 years old. Math, English, Taekwondo, you name it, they're doing it. If your kid isn't in these programs, it's almost like you're setting them up for failure. They even have this saying, sleep 4 hours a day and maybe you'll get into college. Sleep 5 hours and you're screwed. I mean, while talk about pressure, the numbers back this up, too. In 2022, parents spent a record-breaking 26 trillion won on private tutoring. That's like $20 billion. And here's the kicker, no matter how much they spend, only 2% of kids make it into the top 3 universities. And if they do, life doesn't magically get better. Now let's talk about work. You'd think getting a degree from a top school would open doors, right? Nope. Welcome to the grind. In South Korea, 996 work culture, working 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week, would actually be a relief. Instead, people are stuck in this brutal cycle of overwork. A 52-hour workweek was actually a campaign promise from a former president. Like, imagine a 52-hour week being considered a win for work-life balance. Yikes. But here's the thing, this level of grind doesn't even guarantee job security. It's ultra-competitive, and people are constantly worried about losing their jobs. And that fear just feeds into this insane overwork culture. Parents see all this, and they're like, yeah, maybe it's better if my kid doesn't have to deal with this. Can you blame them? Oh, and don't think retirement is the light at the end of the tunnel. For a lot of Koreans, it's more like a revolving door back into the workforce. Over 50% of people in their 60s are still working, and even in their 70s, a third are holding down jobs. That's the highest rate among OECD countries. It's not because they love working, by the way. It's because they have to. So you've got elderly folks driving taxis, working as security guards, and delivering packages just to make ends meet. And guess what? That adds even more pressure to the younger generation. They're seeing their parents and grandparents struggle, and they're like, why would I want to bring a kid into this? Anyway, this isn't just a South Korea problem. You look around, and birth rates are dropping everywhere. Even here in the US, people are having fewer kids. Sure, the reasons might vary, housing, education, healthcare, but the core issue is the same. Life's getting harder, not easier. And honestly, I think there's a bigger question here. Like, what kind of society are we building if young people feel like they're better off opting out? If we want a future where humanity thrives, we've got to make it easier and better for people to build families. That means affordable housing, better work-life balance, and, maybe not treating education like a financial death sentence. So yeah, South Korea's story is a cautionary tale, but it's also an opportunity. If we figure this out, we're not just solving a population crisis, we're creating a world where people actually want to live, thrive, and, be happy.